Let me take this live while everyone's starting in. So we are live. I'll just say for the record, as Daisy comes in, hi Daisy, on with Sharon and Mark as well. This is the John Lavinia Success Mastermind session for today, 15th of July. And this is our mastermind group. For anyone that's watching on YouTube, you're very welcome to join. John Lavinia Success Mastermind website if you want to subscribe. And we are a true mastermind group that meets regularly through the day every week, trying to help each other to carry on our chosen path to success, whether that's entrepreneurial, personal, whatever it is. So we're all gathering while people dial in. It's great to see everybody. Great to see Mark. Haven't seen him for a while. And Gail's coming in as we speak. Saw Gail on the Tuesday call. Lindsay, who was on the session last night and provided the topic to Glenn, I think. So hopefully Lindsay's doing well. I am going to kick off. I'll mute the microphones if I may. And I'll mute the mics just in case anyone's dog starts barking in the background. Mind you, that would probably be a welcome distraction. So let's see how we go. But there's a bit of housekeeping as usual. There are two more sessions today. First of which is, I'll just check calendar, 3:30 Eastern Time USA. It's the yoga, gentle yoga and relaxation, which is Nancy Burtonshaw usually. And then Mark, who's on the call, Mark Riggle, Global and Tactical Marketing, which is a great session looking at world trends, events, the things you need to track and know as an entrepreneur in all aspects of trade, shipping, whatever is the hot topic at the moment. So Mark's doing that at 8 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. So without much ado, we'll start kicking off. Essentially today, having talked to a number of people over the last few weeks, I talked on Tuesday about standing on the edge of greatness, seeing people not quite committing and not quite getting where they want to be, although they have, in my view, all the ability needed to do that. And today, another aspect of what's coming up, and that is pressure. So I'm calling today's talk, Jump into the Pressure Cooker, because I'm afraid in the best way, that's what we have to do. And I'm hoping to draw Mark out later about pressure and see what he has to say about it, because of all the people on these calls, he's probably taken more of it than any of us put together. So I'll hope to hear what his thoughts are. Anyway, really wanted to stress right up front that as entrepreneurs, of course, we've got to be able to cope with pressure. We can't kid ourselves about that. There will be pressure. And actually, we've got to embrace it. And I've learned to embrace it over time. Things that probably would have phased me out when I started don't phase me out anymore, because I know I'm going to do something. Whatever that is, I'm going to do something. And in the heat of the moment, the more you practice, the more capable you are of handling that pressure and doing something that's appropriate. But we also, of course, mustn't forget our mental health. And that will come up later as well. We have to take the pressure and embrace it, but we have to have our minds on mental health as well. And that is why in the John Lavinia Success Mastermind group, we do have yoga, breathing, etc., etc. It's very important we don't ignore that we talk to other people in the group, that we have friends, we have support. We can't do this on our own. We've got to be able to learn to cope with the pressure in the best way for us, because we're all different. What I do to cope with pressure may not suit Mark, may not suit Gail. And you know, healthy pressure, unfortunately, for people that don't like it, healthy pressure is probably, in my view, the only way to advance, I'm afraid. It's the only way to get us going when we have to do something. It gets us off that virtual sofa. And, you know, we have to ask ourselves, well, what are we going to do about it? Can we actually learn to perform under pressure? Well, yes, we can. And I hope Mark will tell us that as well. He's seen a lot of trainees go through incredibly intense military training. And it's amazing what people can do and what they can do under pressure when they have to. But you have to learn to do that. You have to learn to do that. But yes, we can all do it. The old joke I wanted to bring out at this point for Mark, can you perform under pressure, they ask. No, but I can do Bohemian Rhapsody. Had to get that one in for you, Mark. Had to get that one in for you. Anyway, an old Queen joke. But the other thing that I know, having been in business for too many years now, not daring to think how many that is that good client service and project completion does depend on pressure to complete on time and to deliver on time and to deliver to a quality. We have to have that pressure to do well, to do things well, to do them on time. Otherwise, human nature is such that there is drift. There is definite drift, and there always will be. That's how we are. you've got a bit more time, you're going to take it. And I recommend, and what I've always tried to do is impose a deadline on every single external project for clients or every single deliverable, and on every internal task or project. That's particularly important if you're working with a team, because if you don't set deadlines for your team, inevitably they will take more time, you will take more time, things tend to grind to a halt. So I recommend imposing deadlines on everything we're doing externally for clients and internally. And you know, we've all seen that drift. I'm sure all of you will have observed it in yourselves. You give yourself a couple of weeks to finish something, you'll take it. So try putting a delivery date on every single task in your task list to make sure things are going to keep moving. That's pretty essential. And I talked about this self-imposed pressure and deadlines a few months back, and I called it artificial adrenaline. You've got to create the adrenaline we don't have in everyday life, in everyday situations, to get the body pumping, to get the mind going, and to get the vibration and pace that we need to actually do something. And I've talked about this many, many times, but without it, it's hard to actually deliver and really get fired up. You know, sitting in an endless sea of time is just not the answer. You're definitely going to use it. And some of you may remember me mentioning Parkinson's law on one of these calls, a very famous C. Northcote Parkinson, who said that work expands to fill the time available. And boy, does it. You know, if you've got a task, if I told you right now you're going to do a speech in 10 minutes, you would do something, you would do it. If I told you that and said it's in 2 weeks, you'd be working on it for 2 weeks. So we all know Parkinson was absolutely right about this. The more time you give yourself, if it's unreasonably long, you're going to use it. So you have to give yourself pressure deadlines and just bring them back a bit. Don't give yourself too long, because you're going to use that time and you're not going to get as much done in your allocated 12 weeks, your allocated 12 months, however you're timing your progress. But, you know, I spoke about stepping over the edge to greatness on Tuesday. Pressure is definitely needed to get you to step over the edge and try new things. You know, what would we not have done, not have tried, if we hadn't had pressure to do it? Think of friends that pressured you, family, life situations. What would you not have done? What life experiences wouldn't you have had? What new careers may you not have dived into? What about Amazon selling itself? You may not have tried that pressure had there not been external pressure to give it a go. So to move forward, we've got to try and think of all the situations where pressure results in us doing something we wouldn't have done, and then try to replicate that pressure. Put yourself in that moment. Perhaps also you need an accountability partner. That's the pressure some of us need. Someone who's going to mutually hold you to account because you've told them what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. And I know a lot of members of this group have got an accountability partner. It's a key technique for making sure that you've got to turn up on a call and say, yeah, I haven't done it, or I have done it. It's that self-imposed pressure again. It's like having a buddy that just pushes you along. That is what's known as good pressure. That's the good pressure we've got to try and create. But there's a lot of bad pressure too, let's face it. So one key thing is that we've got to learn to relax in various ways, and there are various facets to this. First thing is just don't overdo it. Take deep breaths. Don't have knee-jerk reaction. A lot of people have sort of auto knee-jerk stress that I've observed. They just immediately get stressed over the slightest thing, probably because they're at a very high level of underlying stress in their life. And if so, you've really got to try and address that. It's not good for you. It's not healthy. It's not going to help you to perform at the top of your game. We've got to take deep breaths, stand back before we react and say, hang on, why am I reacting like this? Assess the situation. And then another technique some people use is just try to say before you start, it's easy, and keep saying it's easy throughout the day. I actually had a button on my desk that somebody bought me that when you pressed it, it said easy, and it had easy printed on the button. And actually it's quite fun. And it was a great reminder, hang on, this is not so bad, it's easy. So in bad situations, you just say it's easy and keep telling yourself it's easy. You know, it's possible. Sure, it's always possible. It's not as hard as we first think. And the second thing often to bear in mind is just don't panic when we're faced with a task or an apparent mountain. Look at it again, look at that task again, and try to think about the situation and how that situation would look if really we thought, well, this is an easy task. If we thought it was easy, how would it suddenly look? Is it actually as bad as it first looked? You know, when we pause to think, you know, we do know more than we think quite often about a situation or a task. We tend to bury that in panic and pressure. But when we stop to think, yeah, actually, I do know a bit about this. I can do something about this. And we can often identify workarounds if we don't know, and solutions. They're right in front of us, but they're not going to come out if we start to panic and pressure ourselves unreasonably. So good pressure is good pressure. Bad pressure tends to stress you out and diminish your performance. So go back, look at the task again, and then break it down, break the thing down into small components and say, well, what's actually really involved in this? First of all, let's do the pieces I can do straight off. What's really involved in this? You can often amazingly do much more than you think you can do. And I've seen that in so many people. And then when we broke it down into small components, we can say, well, okay, there are bits maybe I'm not so sure about, but I can get advice and help with those. So what are the things I cannot do right now? But there is a way of doing them. I'll find a way of doing them. There's always a way. Either reinvent the task towards things you can do and that you're skillful at, or get help. But, again, don't just slavishly do what you've been asked to do. And that may seem like a strange comment. I can see Mark's eyebrows probably raised there at this point. But I've always said, don't do what you were asked to do. You stand back and you say, why am I being asked to do this? And why am I being asked to do it this way? It's amazing how many times the person asking you hasn't thought about what they're asking you to do at all. And you've got to do what you should do and what's actually needed, and maybe suggest that it can be done another way. So that's another way that tasks can unnecessarily overwhelm us and stress us and cause panic, because we just haven't thought through, well, hang on a minute, this is not sensible. I think there's a much better way of doing this. Suddenly the whole thing looks different. The situation looks different and the result will be different. So don't hesitate to question, to suggest, and break the task down again. And then another thing you can do in panic situations is ask, really, what is the worst case scenario here? What's the worst that could happen? Is it as bad as I thought it was? Why am I feeling so pressured? Actually, it's not so bad. The world isn't going to end. I'm not going to die. So I can do something about this. And then you immediately start to think in terms of not panic, but mitigation. How can I alleviate the situation, make it better, make the problem better, and make it surmountable rather than insurmountable? That's quite a good way for some people of breaking things down. Learn to relax. Well, relax. Yes, we can all do more than we think we can do. That's the other thing. If we start to criticize ourselves, diminish our own ability, of course, you go in on a losing wicket, as we'd say in cricket in England. You've got to actually recognize you can do more than you think you can do. So when we really want to do it, there's a lot buried in there that we actually know. If you just start a task and start attacking it rather than looking at it like rabbits in a headlight, panicking, there's a lot more we can often do than we really thought we could do. And I always say, and I said in the talk previously, if you oversleep and the alarm doesn't go off, how fast can you get out of that door when you have to? We all know, we've all done it. We've all had to get out there and say, oh my gosh, what a disaster. But somehow we get out there. If I told you the house was going to burn down in 5 minutes, you'd be out of that door within that 5 minutes, guaranteed. So we all know that when we really have to, we can dig deep. But the other facet of that is the other side of the coin, if you like, is that we're all conditioned into believing that only a certain amount can be done in a set time. That's what we're conditioned to believe. Time is finite. We can only do so much in that time. Well, that's true when we've got all the time in the world, but when we have to, we can do something, and we can probably do something that approximates to most of the task. So it's better to have a go than not even to start. At least you've done something. And a lot of the time, suddenly, you've killed most of the problem. But this belief that you can only do so much is, again, negative. It almost suggests, oh, don't bother to start. I can't get more than a certain amount done in this time. I won't bother to start. Well, it's better to start, have a go, reduce the problem, and deliver something than nothing, generally. And by the way, on that front, there are 168 hours in a week. So I don't know how that strikes you. Yes, we've got to sleep, but actually there's a lot more time we can find if we're going to kick ourselves, put ourselves under pressure and say, I need to do this week. Out of one of those 168 hours, there's generally a few minutes you can find here and there. I really believe that. And then positive thinking in terms of relaxation. We can do anything if we think we can. And we've spoken a lot about this mindset in the group, this positivity. Now, at this point, a John Lavinia's Success Mastermind warning, as I gave on Tuesday, please don't try this at home. We can do anything reasonable if we think we can. So for any of the more adventurous members of the audience, yes, within reason. But clearly, if we're going to start telling ourselves, as a lot of people in the group say they have done in the past, we can't do it, you might end up believing it. So just don't tell yourself that too often, because it can become a mindset and embedded, and eventually you don't even recognize it's there. And it's an anchor hanging around your neck. The other thing we can do, and we have this in the group, is meditation and reflection. Now, Nicola, Nancy, Therese, they're all focusing on these more spiritual well-being aspects. You have to build that in. We all need it. We need to look after our mental health, our body, and our relaxation. We can take deep breaths. We can close eyes in bad situations and just regather, just gather our thoughts briefly, momentarily. The yoga sessions we have in the group are focused on breathing. Breathing is very important. That can just take pressure off you. Mark might comment on that. I think he's been in those sessions. He might tell us how they were. Take a walk. That's something Therese talks about. Take a walk and then actually look at what you're seeing around you, not just skate over the surface. Engage, re-engage with reality. And suddenly things don't seem so bad. So it's well worth learning those meditation techniques and those yoga techniques. They can really save you in a very bad situation where you just feel bad and under pressure. Other things that people do, well, I know some people I've spoken to list all the things they're grateful for when there's horrible pressure and they're having a hard day and a hard time. What are you grateful for? And, if you're stressed out, just note what's going well. It's actually quite soothing to note what's gone well and what you actually already have. I'm just hearing at the moment endless stories of terrible suffering, but that actually puts for me into sharp focus what I've actually got and how lucky I am and what I take for granted. And actually things ain't so bad. And it relaxes me every time I think like that. I just then put a different lens on the camera and everything looks different. My perspective is different. So in terms of pressure handling, that's not a bad thing to do. The other thing we can actually do is make pressure a bit of fun. We need to embrace it. So what can we do? Well, there's a great quote from somebody demonstrating how much fun they think it is. Caroline Buchanan said, "I like pressure. Diamonds are made under pressure, and I definitely enjoy it. Diamonds are made under pressure." Yeah, I mean, it's a lovely thought. It fixes it in my mind. I mean, have you had competitions with yourself, for example? Do you try and see how many tasks you can complete in 30 minutes just to see what happens? That's not a bad thing to do. The other challenge is, for example, how many ways can you use a paperclip? Creative pressure. All these things just get us going in terms of being ready to face pressured time situations when we have to deliver, when the chips are down. We have to step out of that comfort zone and compete a bit. And then the more you do that, suddenly, funnily, the less worrying pressure becomes. Another aspect I wanted to mention, don't be phased out by other people. This is where a lot of the problem with pressure comes from, being phased out by other people. LeBron James said, he put it this way, "There's a lot of pressure put on me, but I don't put a lot of pressure on myself. I feel if I play my game, it will take care of itself." And how true that is. We can be too busy listening to other people who then psych us out deliberately or subconsciously. Maybe they're just, stressed people, and suddenly pressure becomes unreasonable and boils over the pot. Other people will deliberately try and phase you out by blinding you with overconfidence, apparent overconfidence, jargon to, put you under pressure, phase you out. Some people love doing that. Just ignore it. You can always do something. Just do what you can do, because it's perfectly okay. If you've done your best in the situation, that's great. So, and then don't be afraid to confront those sort of people and ask about the jargon you're not sure about. They may be deliberately bandying jargon around just to put you off and rack up the pressure on you to make you feel inadequate. People do that. So be proud of who you are. Don't worry about what you don't know. Offer what you do know, and that's all you can do. That's the best you can do. There's another old joke. I was going to tell you a joke about peer pressure, but my friends talked me out of it, which I quite like. But it does sum it up. It fixes in my mind. Yes, it's the other people that are always saying, "Don't do that. Do it this way. What do you mean you don't know about this? Well, hang on. Why haven't you done that?" It's all around us. So we have to learn just to bat that away and hit it out of the park and say, "That doesn't affect me. I'm just going to do my thing. I'm doing my thing." Another old joke from Mark. When a 103-year-old woman was asked what the best thing about reaching 103 was, she said, "No peer pressure," which, again, I rather liked. Very silly joke, but I had to get that in. And again, another aspect about this pressure and dealing with it is just let it roll. Pressure is not helped by worrying. It's made a lot worse. Just roll with the punches. Things are going to happen. Let it flow. There are obstacles strewn in front of us every single day. Just let them come, let them go. There'll be more tomorrow. They were more yesterday, but what the heck does it matter if we're just progressing on our pace, just like we would in a marathon? We've set the pace. We know how many kilometers, miles an hour we're going to do. Just keep doing it. If you're having a bad session, it happens. Don't stress. You'll get back on the thing next time. You might feel better tomorrow if you're having a bad day today. So, goals are great things to have, and we need that kind of personal pressure, but don't beat yourself up. If it doesn't go perfectly to plan every time, don't worry. That's okay. Some days we're just less effective, less in the moment. We get up feeling slightly off. It happens all the time. Doesn't matter. There are plenty of days in the month, plenty of days in our action plan, and we can get back on course later in the day or tomorrow. Prioritization, another key thing. Trite, obvious to say that, but it's amazing how often we just don't query why something has to be done right now. Why right now? Just look at the tasks and the timing and break them down, and don't try and do everything. Prioritize what needs to be tackled first. Otherwise, you're going to blow yourself out through pressure and then wreck the rest of the progress you could have made, as you then start performing under unreasonable stress. Start with the items that make the biggest difference, perhaps. Do not start with the easy stuff, because the pressure will just hit you later when you realize you should have started with the difficult stuff and now the day's gone wrong. So execute, John, as John says, done is the word. Get it done. That gets pressure off. It alleviates pressure. If you don't get things done or they're half done, the pile of pressure grows like a bonfire in front of you. And at some point it's going to go up. Just execute and clear. Procrastination ain't going to help. Hiding from the pressure is going to make it worse. So clear the decks, just start clearing stuff and finish the task. If we leave things half done, that really, boy, is that a good way of getting pressure? When tomorrow I say, oh no, I should have finished this. Well, I had it in my mind. Now it's twice as hard. I'm behind the curve. I've got 15 minutes left. Just get the whole job done and finish it. And it's so important because, to use another quote, self-esteem is the reputation we acquire with ourselves. Self-esteem is the reputation we acquire with ourselves. That was said by Nathaniel Branden in the 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. If we consistently fail to execute, our self-esteem goes down and we start criticizing ourselves, and the pressure goes up. There's a proportionate curve, an inverse proportionate curve here. Esteem goes down and the pressure goes up. So finishing tasks helps us to believe in ourselves and to give ourselves a pat on the back, not to be constantly criticizing ourselves. So getting things done kills pressure. So I'm going to wrap up here, and just to say, really, we just don't want to fear pressure. We have to embrace it as entrepreneurs. We really, really do. We've all got our own way, but those were just a few of my thoughts. And I'm going to open the floor and invite any thoughts on any of those things, because I think pressure seems to be a big thing that's weighing on people right now. So anyone have any thoughts on that? Mark, great to see you.
Of course, I'm going to come out and say something. We're going to talk aviation and all these other things, but yeah. Here, I wrote this down while you were talking about this, and I think this kind of sums it up too. It might be hard to see, but really what it is, as time reduces, our pressure goes up. Especially if we have something that is planned or is on, it's on a timeline, just like you were saying, Adrian. You get closer to that timeline, and you start running out of time, so to speak. And then with that compression of time, you're against a deadline, and it just folds, on top of itself, and just makes it worse and worse and worse. We used to have a saying in plans: plan early, plan thrice. But by the same token, as you know, in aviation, it's if you fail to plan to fail. You must have a plan. You have to have a flight plan. You have to know where you're going. But even having a plan doesn't necessarily mean that things are going to go exactly as planned. In fact, we also have another saying says plan's only good to the point of execution. Once you go off the line of departure, your plan might not mean a hell of beans. So You just don't know. But if you don't have anything and you're just shooting from the hip, I think you're putting undue pressure on yourself by not having those kind of things in place. It's eating the elephant one bite at a time. I just wrote some notes down here. I find aviation is such an interesting animal. When I first flew, started flying, the instructor, the first thing, well, second thing out of his mouth, first thing was his, I'm John, blah, blah, Second thing he said, it's always better to be on the ground wishing you were in the air than to be in the air wishing you were on the ground. And I think that kind of applies here too. If you're doing the planning and you've put things in place, then you're not going to stress out as much as things start to go awry. Anybody who's done any reading on any kind of aviation accidents or accidents in other things for that matter, it's usually a series of events that that cause it. It's just one mistake that or a miscue that rides on another one, which rides on another one, and it's a whole series of things that ultimately come into play for a final, the final play, the final act, and that's what gets people in trouble is they didn't, as you had mentioned in your talk here, Adrian, they didn't try to eat that elephant at that point. They didn't try to take care of that issue at that time and just keep moving down the line, trying to hit those targets as they come up, instead of just letting them all kind of fester and build to the point where like now it's insurmountable. Now really it is. And once it becomes this perception of insurmountability, what happens is that in and of itself becomes more the issue than tackling each one of the issues as they come along, because now the whole psychology of oneself, it begins to feed on you and becomes a weight upon oneself, and that just adds fuel to the fire for negativity and not being able to accomplish the things you want to do. So I found the more I studied and became familiar and understood my emergency procedures in aviation, the funner it became to fly. Because, and I had a few emergencies. I had a few situations where I might have a loss of power, or you smell electrical wires. That means something is burning in the airplane. And when you're up at 8,000 feet, and that happens, and you're doing an IFR, instrument flight, and those kind of things, there are procedural things, and you have to fly a certain way. And do I call in a mayday, or what else is going on? Is the fire or is the burning wire inside the engine compartment? Do I put the airplane into a dive to get enough wind across it to blow out the fire? I mean, there's a whole series of things that you go through, and if you understand your emergency procedures and you just click them off and you don't even think about it because of the training, because of the repetition, repetition is the mother of all skill, etc. Then actually, when you can go out there and enjoy yourself to do all these things, and when that kind of stuff pops up in front of your face, you take care of it like that and you're done. And it's like, okay, wow, I didn't even think about that. Same thing in our military training. It's all the same thing, I think, with our driving and our driving skills. Our businesses, we get repetitive in all the things that we do, and when these little faux pas come up, or these little changes or consumer adjustments in our thinking, and and we understand how fickle the market is, we make the adjustments and we move on, and we don't take it personally. It's just the way things are, and I just think that it just reduces the stress level when we approach things like that, and just don't. And I'm my own worst critic, so I have to caution myself just as much as anyone else, I suppose, because I am sort of an A personality, and I want to get things done, and I want it to happen, and I want it to happen now, and those are I have to continually caution myself. So these things like you mentioned too, Adrian, with Nicola. I do those sessions as much as I can and I do the savers every morning, Elrod, because and do my gratitudes and blessings and all those kind of things, because all of it makes a difference. All of it sets the tone for the mind for the day. And man, I need that, because I'm one of those guys who has to have that working on me. Otherwise, I can go to the dark side in a New York second. So, all right, I've gabbed enough, Adrian.
Great thoughts, Mark. No, that's great thoughts. That's incredibly useful insights. And you raised the aviation. So we haven't talked aviation for a while, Mark. That's good to hear. And it does bring me back to that. Yes, I mean, planning early, but also having procedures. So a plan and procedures, and knowing those procedures. Now, Shannon's told everybody that's been on her sessions, get a procedure down for everything you do on a repeated basis and learn it well. And then suddenly it's autopilot, isn't it, Mark? The stress reduces because you know exactly what to do. Do it again and again the same way, you feel better. And the other thing is, it permits you to think ahead. In aviation, when we do our first private pilot's license, you think one step ahead. When you do the instrument rating, you've got to think 3 steps ahead. You've got to know the next 3 things you're going to do, like changing the radio frequency, looking at the arrival plate for the instrument approach. You've got to have that clearly in your mind. You don't have time under that pressure to think, hey, what am I going to do now? It's too late. It's all over. You've got to think about that 3 steps ahead. I'm going to be asked to do that, and I need to do it in a split second. I need to know exactly what I'm going to do. So that's planning ahead, but it's also procedures. And as an entrepreneur, you can have those procedures in your business, so you know exactly what you're going to do every time. Really helpful, Mark. And the other thing that comes out of the aviation is you're taught to scan rapidly, constantly, everything that's around you, the instruments, what's happening on every instrument indicator. Now, if you don't do that in your business, you're going to have problems, because you won't notice that the cash flow's gone awry, or something's happened around you should have noticed earlier, or the deadline's come up, or you missed a diary appointment with a crucial client. Keep scanning the task list, their diary, their cash flow, everything you're doing, the responses to your orders. It's all about scanning the instruments, as we would say in the aviation. And you never stop doing it. The moment you stop doing that, the next thing you know, you're on the ground because you forgot to look at the dial, and the dial went wrong 15 minutes ago and it's too late. So brilliant. Yeah, I love it. Love it, Mark. Love all those thoughts. And Sharon has a hand up. Great to see you, Sharon.
Good to see you guys as well. What a great topic, Adrian, and just full of things. My mind was just bouncing every time you were bringing up a new element of this. Most of you know I'm a teacher. I know that Janet is another teacher in this group, but there's a certain amount of pressure as the students come into a room that I put on myself to plan and set goals for myself as well as my students. But with children, or if I say middle schoolers, you just never know what you're going to get on a day-to-day basis. If someone's having a bad day, that could just take the whole class down, take in a different direction. You have to diffuse, some tough moments, because middle schoolers can lose it in a moment if someone looks at them wrong, literally, or says something wrong, and you've got to bring them back, and that creates its own pressure. My music students and I every year have created a self-imposed deadline towards a festival, a big festival in March. So from literally September to March, that's my goal for months. And I let my students in on that. I explain to them why we're doing certain things, why we have certain goals, what they need to achieve every day or week or month to kind of keep it in perspective. But, children don't have that long-term perspective as we do sometimes. And it's moment by moment. So that's a different kind of pressure that my students put on me and I put on them. And like Mark said, I'm kind of type A, and I want to get it done without much interruption. So with students, that can be a little challenging. To switch gears in my Amazon business, putting on that different hat, it really is tough to set self-imposed goals. I find it difficult because I can be very scattered. I'll go on Facebook. Like last night, I was on the Helium 10 Facebook page asking a question regarding my products that came in yesterday to New York. I'm working with a 3PL for the first time, learning what that entails. I needed to get this information about creating the pallet shipment to my 3PL, a self-imposed deadline of today. So yesterday was full of YouTube videos, again, consulting Helium 10 members, just trying to get my head around this process. And I was feeling some pressure because I need to get this done. I'm going to be out of the country in a couple of weeks, band camp, school, all that starts. If I don't get it done now, it's not going to get done. So I enjoy, I was sitting here this morning when I sent that email to my 3PL, excited and nervous and all these emotions that come with the pressure. But just glad it was done. It might not be perfect, but as John says, it's done. And we can go back and we can tweak. But I enjoy the pressure, both with my students in a performance setting. And that is probably the most pressure I feel professionally every year, is standing on the stage at a festival in front of judges who are judging me. The kids think they're being judged, but really it's me that's being judged. And I don't let them in on that. I let them feel that pressure. And it's exciting to me to watch them go through that process of, can I play my instrument? Yes, you've done the preparation. And I love the day or two before a concert or a festival, because I get to release that pressure knowing that I've done everything I could have done from September to March. And I try my best to just enjoy the moment with them. So once that pressure builds, there has to be a point where you release it and just enjoy the ride. Getting on a roller coaster, you're going to enjoy it, but those ups and downs are terrifying. So yeah, that's my pressure thought for the day.
Oh, it's brilliant. No, truckload of good thoughts there. And yeah, setting the festival deadline, which is self-imposed, as I was saying, self-imposed adrenaline, you've got to have it. I'm afraid you've got to have it. And as you say, once you've put all the hard legwork in, it's fun at the end of the process. Doesn't seem like it at the beginning, but it's fun when you're ready, providing you're ready and you've kept going, as Mark would say, and has just told us, gradually throughout. Don't leave these things to pile up, because they go critical on you. And explaining the reasons for the goals to your students so everyone understands what pressure is at the end of the day, what you're trying to meet the expectation level, all important, and breaking it down as you did into tasks throughout the period so they could see what had to be done when, crucial stuff. And again, you've got to create those procedures that you were learning something new. Now you've got to create the procedure from that new knowledge you've got yesterday and today. So the next time you do it, it'll be a little easy. You know how to do it. It's easy. I've done this before. I spent hours researching it. I'm not going to lose a single piece of that knowledge I've just gained. We don't often do that, unfortunately. In the rush of the moment, we spend 5 hours researching, and then we don't look at it for 6 months. We've got to do it all over again. More pressure. And the music, you reminded me, really, having been on stage and performed for some years, there's nothing like it. But you know what? We made a lot of mistakes, but we knew we had to keep going. You just have to keep doing your best and delivering something. You don't just put your instrument down and say, can't do this. You pull it back. And the more you do it, funnily, the better you can pull it back. So we got pretty good as a band, eventually pulling things back, and people didn't even notice, because you were just together and you practiced and you knew you could do it. Very, very uncomfortable when you start, though. But the more you do it, the more you practice, the more as an entrepreneur you take things on and you try it, the more comfortable you're going to feel. And I will guarantee you that. I'll guarantee.
Adrian, a quick follow-up.
Yeah.
That comment, a lot of my students feel the pressure, I'm going to make a mistake. Yes, you are going to make a mistake. And that's at the point where you get to release that pressure on yourself that, okay, we made the mistake. Now I'm great. You knew you were going to make a mistake. It just happened. Now take a deep breath, because now you've made the mistake. Now what? You pick up and you go on, and it's okay. You survive. Like you said, you didn't die. It wasn't that bad.
Great point. And, it makes me think of the other effect I noticed. Every time we were going to perform, you've got to be 150% ready in practice to be anything near 100% when it's live, because the pressure is immense, especially if you've got a big audience, you're doing an important task. So the more you prepare in advance, you've got to force yourself to be way over 100% to be able to do anything on the day, because you will stress out, you will pressure yourself, and your performance will go down. So you've got to be super ready before you put yourself into a bad situation. And that's something I've definitely noticed over time. Absolutely critical. There's nothing like forward preparation to the nth degree, way over the top, to be even partly ready on the day. And it just carries you through, because things are going to go wrong. Things are going to go wrong. As Mark will certainly tell us, things always go wrong. You plan, then you tear the plan up before you get on the battlefield. That's based on that famous quote. The battle plan just somehow is useless the moment you get on the field. And that's what happens. But then you can adapt because you've practiced. So love that, Sharon. That's very useful thoughts for everybody, and from Mark too. So I'm not sure if anyone else wants to dive out and say anything about pressure and embracing it, but I wanted to tackle this and get it on the table today because we can't ignore it. Here we go. Edward, great to hear from you.
Okay, well, this is a very timely subject because what I've learned about pressure is that it's all about not having discipline that creates the pressure. If you have the discipline you need to have based on the purpose that you say you have, then your pressure won't be there. You'll have progress instead of pressure. Because what I'm finding out more than anything else is the discipline is in your head. It's not anywhere else. If you defeat the monster that's in your head, or like I like to say, the weather that's in your head, then, you can go ahead and conquer, everything, and you don't have to worry about the pressure. You don't have to worry about self-induced pressure because you know that you either have discipline or you have regret. Okay. And which one is what you want? So you make a decision every day, every minute, every hour, every 15 minutes, like with me, I try my best to make 80 phone calls every day, but it's hard sometimes, so I got to fight the weather in my head so that I can continue to do what I need to do for my DMO, my daily mode of operation. Your feelings determine your outcomes. Okay. If you don't have a purpose. Okay. But if you have a purpose, then your feelings won't matter. A lot of people say, my feelings don't matter. That's why we're here, we're there. No, your feelings don't matter because your goals matter more than your feelings. Your vision matters more than your feelings. Your outcomes matter more than your feelings, because guess what? Your feelings will always keep you where it is that you are and not where you want to be. So you spend your time cultivating the attitude of increase, like John talks about. So, I'm learning more and more, and by no means am I perfecting anything, but I'm progressing, I'm learning, and we all have to understand that progressing and learning is why we're here. I show up at 12 every day. The only reason I don't show up is somebody, schedule an appointment or whatever the case may be. Just like the other sessions, I get those in recording because now, when I first started, I had all the time in the world because I was undisciplined, and I was creating pressure myself. But now, because of, my purpose, the meaning I put behind stuff, I'm learning about reframing. So all that pretty much eradicates the pressure that everybody says that, that you need. Yes, you're going to have that because the discipline that you've created is going to create the pressure, because when you're not doing what you need to do, you're going to have to say, hey, let's snap out of it because, am I getting further away from my goals or am I getting closer to my goals? Well, guess what? That creates pressure that allows you to walk back in discipline and take the correct action. Everything's connected, and it's amazing how, we don't want to just say, hey, if it's to be, it's up to me. Either I'm going to do it or I'm not, and accountability partners and everything, they're fantastic. But the number one accountability partner is that guy that sits between the 6 inches in your head. That's what we've got to do. We've got to really take responsibility and just say, it's sometimes it's really hard and it's revelational. But when you get in those funks, like I was in a funk yesterday, you get in that funk, what you do is you pick up a book and you read about, somebody else who had it way worse off than you. Like I saw a documentary last night of Madam C.J. Walker. And do you realize that she started with $2 and a dream? $2 and a dream. And she wound up, before she passed away, she was living on an estate with a neighbor on the right side of Thomas Edison and a neighbor on the left side of Rockefeller. So she started out with $2 and a dream. So it doesn't take a whole lot. All it takes is, conviction, purpose, stick-to-itiveness, and making a decision. And that will pretty much eradicate the need for deadlines, because you'll have goals, and the goals will supersede all that. I mean, that's what I see. I may be way wrong, but I'm just saying in terms of the way I see it. That's all.
That's great, Edward. I think you're way right. I mean, we know that discipline is a key connector to pressure. So I was talking about the self-induced adrenaline we've got to put in place within our goals, but those goals are the ultimate driver that keep us going towards the target, that's for sure. And actually, the other link with discipline is that the pressure often comes from things we haven't done. And Mark alluded to that. The things we haven't done come back to bite us, make us feel bad, put us under pressure because we're late, we're behind, incomplete, we're not going to deliver properly. There is a definite connection to our self-discipline, our deadlines, and our pressure. So you've hit on a key theme there as well, I think. And I tell you what, if I had to make 84 calls a day, I'd feel under pressure, Edward. So I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. But, goals and vision, critical stuff. And it is the tractor beam, as I said to our friend Glenn, the tractor beam that drags us forward are those goals and those visions. That will pull us through any pressure. If we really believe in them and we're aligned with them, and those are our burning desires, we're going to find a way through that pressure, that's for sure. So thanks for reminding us of that. That's very, very inspiring. Thank you. So I'm not sure if anyone else wants to add any thoughts on pressure. Today, I was really talking about the fact that we have to embrace it, whether we like it or not as entrepreneurs, but it's not so bad and we can handle it. And we had a bit of a discussion about how to handle it and what drives us in these situations. So hope that was useful. Shannon's traveling today, so I'm filling in for the great Shannon, who is impossible to replace. So we're looking forward to seeing her back. A bit of housekeeping I'll come to in a second. So housekeeping for tonight, 3:30 Eastern time US is the gentle yoga and relaxation session, normally with Nancy Burtonshaw, who I think is doing it today. And at 8 o'clock Eastern, you've got global and tactical marketing with Mark himself, covering global issues for entrepreneurs in e-commerce and other spheres, and the things we should be aware of, the trends that are unfolding, anything from shipping problems to textiles and sourcing and other issues. And Mark, did you want to comment on that?
Oh, Adrian, I just want to make when we were talking about this, something popped into my head. You've been through this in aviation. We understand this. I think one of the most important trainings that I did when I was learning to fly was purposely stalling the airplane. This is where you purposely slow the airplane down to the point that the relative wind going across the wing does not create lift any longer, and you literally fall out of the sky, because you have to learn how to recover from that. So, the first time I did it, it was, the heart's pumping pretty hard, and the instructor walks you through that. But I became one of the guys in the flying club that was known for going out and purposely doing stalls, because after I learned how to do it, it was actually really, really fun to go out there and get at it about, 3,000 to 4,000 feet and, do about 6 or 7 little turns as you're falling out of the sky. And you are attached to that, to that fiberglass and metal and everything, and it's pulling you down, and the earth is getting bigger. But it's a lot of fun, and it's a good confidence builder, because just like in our business, I think once you do that a few times and you understand how to recover from it, the procedures that are done, then it's just another event. And it's nothing to worry about. So, but I remember the first time I was going through that, Adrian, and it just, or the first time that I'm in a holding pattern in the goo, flying by instruments and having to understand procedures and doing delay vectors into, areas where you have multiple airports and you have to stay in corridors. And because I learned to fly in the LA basin, with LAX on one side and Torrance and Van Nuys and yeah, just, a lot of fun. It's some fond memories, and anybody who wants to learn to fly, I recommend it. It will change the way you look at things too.
So there you go. A man who likes deliberately stalling. Just remind me never to play Russian roulette with you, Mark. I don't think it would end well. I never like the stalls. I never like them, but it's all part of the training. You get used to handling it. And there is there the opposite reaction to the one you should take. You're trained how to react oppositely to what your body is telling you to do to save the stall. So no, that's great, Mark. And yeah, you know, it's all about practice and training, and flying is a great discipline for that sort of thing. And it does go across into life and entrepreneurship too, which is why we keep talking about it. Anyway, so that's great further thoughts. And so I was just saying, Mark's on tonight if you want to listen to Mark's great talk, 8 o'clock Eastern time. So really, just to close off, don't fear pressure. That's the message. Embrace it, because we have to. We've got to get used to it. Great Ernest Hemingway quote that I remembered as well. Courage is grace under pressure. Courage is grace under pressure. That takes some thinking about, but what a great thing to say. It's a beautiful thought for me, that. So let's jump into that pressure cooker courageously, fully prepared. Let's practice as much as we can. And let's go make some diamonds. And the last thing I would say is just remember, the opinion of those who matter is unlikely to judge you for facing pressure and doing your best. That's all you can ever do, is do your best. So don't be phased out by the opinion of others. The opinion of those that matter will recognize that you've done something, you've done your best. That's all we need to remember. So really, thanks for joining. Hope to see you on some of the sessions later. And business as usual tomorrow as well, with the Fun Friday coming up. John's back in business, so we're looking forward to that as well. Take care, everybody. Thanks so much for the thoughts today. Thanks for joining, and see you later. Bye for now. Bye.